Fast skating and a tough time in the penalty kill gave the Lightning their first loss of the season, but Jake Gensel got on the score sheet for the first time. On today's episode of Locked On Lightning, we recap the Lightning's last loss and take a look at the 4-game week ahead.
You're Locked On Lightning, your daily podcast on the Tampa Bay Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into this episode of Locked On Lightning and the new week here on Locked On Lightning. We thank you for making Locked On Lightning your first listen every day. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And if your team is the Tampa Bay Lightning, this is the podcast for you. Josh Sperber here as we take a look at the week that was and the week that will be on this week of Locked On Lightning. The week that was kind of ended on a sour note. After two really solid home games, the Tampa Bay Lightning took the loss against the Ottawa Senators in a back-and-forth contest. The Senators got the first two goals. Lightning got the next two. Then they alternated in the next three. A power play goal and a shorthanded goal gave Ottawa a 5-3 lead. Mitchell Chaffee scored a goal with over 10 minutes left in the third period, but the Lightning were unable to finish the comeback, and 5-4 the score was. Ottawa scored two of their 5 goals on the power play, including the game opener, and what proved to be the game-winning goal. So 2 key goals on the power play, and a shorthanded goal really put the icing on the cake from Gregor, but the Lightning still played a really solid game. Losing the special teams, though, was something that really the entire team said was the key portion of the game. John Cooper spoke post-game, and, that was one of the things that he touched on the most. I mean, he even said that you're not going to win the special teams battle every game. He says that it's a war that the Lightning can win frequently, and it is something that they had in just about every game to start the season so far. But that was not the case tonight, and really, if you give up 2 power play goals and a shorthanded goal, that's 3 goals when the numbers are uneven. I don't think I need to tell you guys the math, but I also don't think I need to tell you that giving up those 3 goals on special teams is just not a recipe to win games. And for me, honestly, the biggest takeaway of this game didn't have to do with special teams. Obviously, that was, a big downside to the Lightning games, but it just seemed like Ottawa was a step ahead of them at every single interval. They just seemed to beat them down the ice each time, beat them to the rebounds, and got those second chances. I mean, that is, I think, what really tipped the scales, possibly even more than those power play goals, than that shorthanded goals. It was just the fact that Ottawa seemed to be hustling a bit more than the Tampa Bay Lightning. And, on home ice, that is something that, you need to do. It was a very different road game for Tampa. They got that road win to start the season in Carolina, and the fewest goals the Lightning have scored were these 3 in the loss against Ottawa. So I think the Lightning definitely need to work on the power play. They're converting on less than 20% of their power plays so far. It's dropped down to about 15 after Saturday's loss. And that is something that Tampa, I think, certainly needs to work on. I mean, it was something that we talked about was a big focus of the Lightning in the offseason. Nikita Kucherov, in the preseason especially, was very big on just trying to get those power plays working for the Tampa Bay Lightning, trying to get that extra practice, and it shows that he needed. That being said, Nikita Kucherov continued his outstanding start to the season. 4 straight games with a goal to start the year. First player in Lightning history with 7 goals through the first 4 games of a season, and the first player since James Neal with Edmonton in 2019 to score 7 goals in the first 4 games of the season. So the offensive play is still very much there. I don't want that to get twisted. The Tampa Bay Lightning's offense has been one of the best in the NHL so far. They've scored 15 goals in 4 games. That is very impressive. And Nikita Kucherov has been a huge part of that. He is gotten more opportunities to score goals this time, and the assists might still come. Only 2 assists through 4 games after an 100 assist season is different. I mean, it's just kind of we're seeing a different side of Nikita Kucherov. He's being a lot more aggressive and taking more matters into his own hands and really kind of establishing himself as the primary goal scoring option. It was Braden Point and Steven Stamkos who seemed to be getting the pucks ahead of Kucherov last season for shots. Kucherov was just kind of feeding him, and Jake Gensel is really adapting to more of an assist role. Braden Point needs 10 assists to reach 300 for his career, and you have so many talented goal scorers on that first line that I really think it's going to kind of come in shifts as who's going to be the top scorer. You have Kucherov, who now I think is going to be the leading scorer. That is a certain departure from what I thought at the beginning of the season. You know, I definitely thought he'd continue to go on that assist path, maybe try and get 100 this year, but it really seems like he is going to be that guy when it comes to scoring goals, maybe not even just for the Lightning, but in the entire NHL. I think that he is going to win the Hart Trophy. That's something that I've predicted on this show already, but he's in line for the Rocket Richard Trophy right now, and he is absolutely shooting rockets at the net with one in each of his first 4 games. Of course, Jake Gensel getting on the score sheet is, in my opinion, the biggest storyline to come from this game because, you know, we've talked about how hyped his acquisition was for the Lightning. I mean, there's obviously going to be a lot of expectations levied on a guy who gets a $7 year, $80 million contract to replace one of the most prominent figures in franchise history, a future Hall of Famer in Steven Stamkos. We don't need to keep going down that road of who Gensel is replacing. What we do need to talk about is how big that first goal was, because you see it so many different times. Gensel didn't speak to the media after the game, but getting that first goal, I mean, I've talked to players, you know, in multiple sports, whether it's just getting their first, you know, bucket in basketball, hitting their first home run of the season in baseball, but starting out on a strong foot with your new team is just immense. And Gensel has scored a point in every game he has played so far with the Tampa Bay Lightning, but just getting on the goal sheet, I think, is going to mean that much more. Goals are always the stats that are looked on the most favorably because it's just a direct, this guy scored, this guy put a point on the board. While I am one of the few people that believe assists are possibly even more important than goal scoring, I'm loving what Gensel has done so far. But the main point that I'm trying to make is this, I think, can unlock something in Jake Gensel. He's got the monkey off of his back. He's got his name on the score sheet and not just as the primary assister. I think that getting this goal for Gensel is really going to help him get off to, you know, get to the kind of level that you want to see a 7-year, $80+ million man get to. You want that guy to be an elite offensive producer. He has certainly shown it with the passing. The goal scoring is going to start. And we talked about the speed. Ottawa just seemed to step ahead of the Tampa Bay Lightning on the ice. And Jake Gensel, that goal was just lightning quick. He saw a rebound, the puck dropped in front of his stick. He was close enough to the net, and he just, bam, knocked it right in. And that's the kind of quickness that you want to see from the Tampa Bay Lightning. That's the kind of speed that you want the Lightning to have when the puck is in front of their net. And Jake Gensel was just great once again for the Tampa Bay Lightning. He has been just as advertised, and getting that tying goal and helping the Lightning really win the battle at even strength. But of course, tipping the scales was the power play for the Ottawa Senators. So I think the biggest takeaways from this game, other than just loving to see Jake Gensel getting on the score sheet, I'm expecting a lot more from him in the upcoming week. But the power play, the penalty kill, these are things that Tampa must work on. For the Lightning to get back to the playoffs, they need to get back to the elite power play that they've had for most of John Cooper's tenure, for most of this, you know, Stanley Cup contending Lightning teams that we've enjoyed over the past couple of years. They have had an elite power play. They have had an elite penalty kill every single game except for last night. except for Saturday. So getting that penalty back, I think this is going to be a fluke. You're not going to see too many games, I don't think, with multiple opponent power play goals, certainly not with opponent shorthanded goals. But the special teams are really the only area of play that I see the Lightning needing to work on a whole lot. Their 5-on-5 game is very strong. They won that battle again tonight, but getting those power play goals are crucial. Stopping those power play goals are even more crucial for the Tampa Bay Lightning. We'll be right back after a quick break, but the Lightning have a huge week coming up against from them. They've got 4 games, 2 on the road, then 2 at home, almost in exact succession. We're going to break down the most crucial games for the Tampa Bay Lightning on the week ahead when we return. Now, I have had back problems for a little while, and once they had gotten worse a couple weeks ago, I found the joint. They have over 20 locations in the Tampa Bay area. It was my first time going to a chiropractor, so they made sure before they did anything just to diagnose what was going on. And they really identified kind of the problem areas, like what was causing my back pain, and they fixed them. I mean, I've felt so much better since getting on that stretching program that the joint gave me. And since that they, did the little stretches that they did that honestly, I can't even comprehend just the magic that those doctors work on my back. So there are plenty of places to get, help for any of your pain, whatever really ails you. I recommend the Joint Chiropractic. As I said, there are 23 locations in the Tampa Bay area. I went to one on Gulf to Bay Boulevard in Clearwater, and you can get your first visit for $19 if you change Tampa Sports and go to Buccaneers.com/fans, contests, and promotions. You can get $19 for your first visit, and those first visits typically cost upwards of $50, $60, $70. So you're getting a great deal, and you're going to get a great service, as the Joint Chiropractic is certainly a place I would recommend if you have pain in really any part of your body. And there are plenty of places to get to Joint Chiropractic if you live in the Tampa Bay area. We're back talking about a big week coming up ahead on Locked On Lightning for the Tampa Bay Lightning, including one of the 2 biggest games I have had circled on my calendar for the Tampa Bay Lightning in their first month of the season. A week from today, we will talk about what I believe is the Lightning's biggest test of the early point of the season. Their 3rd home game in a row, it will be. And next week, it'll be against Steven Stamkos, the Nashville Predators. This week, though, it is against one of my Stanley Cup favorites and the Toronto Maple Leafs to finish off a 3-game road trip. And there are a couple reasons I think that this Maple Leafs game is especially important. First off, the Lightning are kind of a team on the edge. I would call them a bubble team at the early point of the season in terms of favorites. The Maple Leafs are one of the favorites, and I believe the team that is going to win the Atlantic Division at the end of the season. I mentioned that on a Locked On NHL preview podcast a little bit ago, but I think that this is just a huge test for the Tampa Bay Lightning. And I don't want to knock the schedule that Tampa's had, because they've played some solid teams. Every team except for Ottawa that they've played to start the season made the playoffs last year. Ironically, it was Ottawa that beat them, but that's not the point that I'm trying to make here. The Lightning have played difficult teams, and for the most part, won pretty convincingly. They came back and beat the Knights, but they were still in that game. There was never a point where I was thinking, oh no, the Lightning are just cooked. Might not have been true during the Senators game, but the Lightning have played the 3 playoff teams very well. 4-1 win on the road against Carolina, 4-1 win against the Canucks at home, 4-3 win against the Golden Knights at home in that just spectacular comeback. Now they're in one of the tougher places to play in the NHL, with just a really passionate and hungry fan base with a lot of expectations on their shoulders in the Toronto Maple Leafs. And, obviously you play guys like Austin Matthews and the talent that Toronto has on their team. That's not easy either, but this is a Lightning team that is already coming off of a road game in which they struggled. I mean, this is legitimately the first time this season that I can say that the Lightning struggled in one of their games. And it showed, particularly the extra man opportunities. They were unable to get much going during the penalty kill. They weren't able to stop the power play for the most part for Ottawa. And these are just mistakes that they can't afford to make against the Toronto Maple Leafs. And they're coming off of the two games in a row where they allowed more goals than they had allowed all season. They allowed 2 goals in the first 2 games. They've allowed 8 in the last 2 games. And this is a game where they need to get things right. Yes, it's early in the season, and we're not deciding playoff seeds or anything like that, but every game still means something. And these are the kind of tests that if you're a team that wants to prove some doubters wrong, that wants to continue their history of playoff contention and playoff excellence, these are the kind of games that you have to win. Because come May, come June, when the playoffs are really starting to heat up and, teams are getting eliminated, the Toronto Maple Leafs, in my view, are one of the teams that the Lightning are going to have to beat to get to the promised land. And if you don't start it now, if you don't start it in the regular season, then it's not going to come as easily in the playoffs. And, obviously Stanley Cup playoffs is a different animal than anything. There's quite simply nothing like it. And I'm not going to even try and argue that tonight's game is, one of those games that is like a playoff game right now. But I really think the Lightning should treat it like that. It's still a regular season game, yes, but these are just the kind of teams that you want to beat. And defensively, there are things the Lightning need to improve on. Particularly in that Ottawa game is one of the few times that I'll say Vasilevsky just didn't look that good in goal. And the Senators were just taking good shots. They were really hitting their corners. But, it just, like the rest of the defense, Vasilevsky just kind of seemed to step behind those Senators. And that was one of the reasons that they let up 5 goals. They let up that shorthanded goal. And not all the goals were Vasilevsky's fault. There were definitely some of them where the defenders just got beat. They weren't back far enough. I mean, whatever. We can talk about the excuses all you want, but the defense just looked slower today. And that's not something that I've really seen. It really seemed like the Lightning were outpacing their opponent, and the defense looked so sharp in the first couple of games of the season. And it's going to have to be. They're going to have to be at their best to beat these Toronto Maple Leafs tonight. And, Austin Matthews might still get his. You might see another high-scoring game, and I think that is really going to be the case in some of these crucial games against top-level opponents from the Tampa Bay Lightning. You might see high-scoring games against teams like the Maple Leafs, against teams like the Predators, against teams like the Capitals maybe when they come to town on Saturday. But these are still games that Tampa Bay needs to take even more seriously. These are games that, even at this point of the season, mean a little bit extra. When you're a contender and you're playing other contenders, those are games that you need to make a statement. And this could be a statement game for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Coming off of a loss and getting a win over the Toronto Maple Leafs would be a massive momentum boost for the Tampa Bay Lightning. And I think they're going to get it. I think that, again, we'll talk more, big foreshadowing for next week. We'll talk about what a statement game that one against Nashville could be. But first, the statement that they need to make against these Toronto Maple Leafs is that they are also a contending team. They are a team that needs to be looked upon as a contender, as a legitimate threat to hold that Stanley Cup. at the end of the season. And, I know it's really early to say something like that. I think, there's still some things that the Lightning's defense needs to tighten up in order to really cement themselves as title contenders. But the most important stat to me of any game is who won. And if the Lightning can beat the Toronto Maple Leafs, then you really have to call them contenders. You really have to give the Lightning a chance to win their third Stanley Cup title in under 10 years. And I think that they can get on their way and take down the Toronto Maple Leafs at home. And I think some of the right things are starting to click. I think Jake Gensel getting a goal is huge, and I think he's going to be poised for another big game to build off on that on the road. And I think Nikita Kucherov is going to continue his streak. I'm going to give a 4-2 win to the Tampa Bay Lightning with an empty net goal that seals it over the Toronto Maple Leafs tonight, because that is the biggest game of this week. And this is a game that you need to see the absolute best of the Tampa Bay Lightning. So that is going to do it for this segment. And we're going to further break down the game against the Toronto Maple Leafs and talk a little bit more specifically about what the Lightning can do to improve on their performance against Ottawa. Well, you guys can get a big start on the season with a big return from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That is FanDuel.com, and that is the best way to place your sports bets. And FanDuel also has odds for every NHL game, including tonight's tilt for the Tampa Bay Lightning against the Toronto Maple Leafs. And we'll take a look at those odds on FanDuel. And it does look like the Maple Leafs are slightly favored, but remember, you can go to FanDuel.com for any edge you need on betting and, of course, odds on every NHL game. So the final segment, and, we talked about, why this game, I think, was so important for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Just the chance to beat a division foe, to beat a potential contender playoff team. But what can they do to do that? And I think offensively is not where they need to improve. I think offensively, the Lightning have done just about everything that they can do except on the power play. Obviously, that power play is something that just needs to go better, frankly, for the Tampa Bay Lightning. And Nikita Kucherov, I think, needs to have a big hand in that. I'd like to see him get a power play goal. He really is the quarterback of that Tampa Bay Lightning power play. And, getting him directly involved, he'd score his first goal of the season on a power play. And that spurred 3 more consecutive goals, 2 empty netters, but still. The Lightning scored the last 3 goals after Kucherov got that power play goal. They scored 2 more empty netters after that power play goal, but the game was in their hands when they scored those goals. And, those you could see in that opener how crucial power play goals would be to the Tampa Bay Lightning season. And that really showed in game 1. I think a massive key to this game against the Maple Leafs is get a power play goal, period. You got to get one yourself, and you got to stop the Maple Leafs from getting one. I know that seems very obvious, but it just needs to happen. I think that would be the perfect way to rebound from this game against the Senators, where they struggled on the power play and the penalty kill. A shorthanded goal and 2 power play goals against you is going to lose you most games. So I think the biggest thing that the Lightning need to do is limit the penalties. And, if they, rack up 14 penalty minutes again, then just really tighten up that penalty kill. They definitely gave up a lot of rebounds as well. And that was, I don't think, completely on Vasilevsky. Sometimes a puck is just going to bounce right off that pad and in the path of another skater. And that did happen once or twice, but Vasilevsky can't be responsible for collecting all those rebounds. Sometimes the defense, well, all the time the defense has to crash the net, but you've got to get some Lightning players closer into the crease to crash that, to stop the other team from getting those easy rebounds and tap-ins. So those are the kind of goals that they need to prevent as well. But I think that the whole power play thing will curb that. I think something else that I'd love to see the Lightning get activated some of their lower lines. The majority of their goal scoring from Tampa has been from the first and second line. And is that normally going to be the case for most teams? Yes, absolutely. But I really think that, because the Lightning have some young players, some more unproven players on their third and fourth forward lines, getting them, getting on the score sheet, them getting more chances on the net can only help this Lightning team. Young teams like the Lightning right now need to kind of establish their depth. Obviously the Lightning have guys, but you take a look at the system, the Lightning have the 28th ranked farm system in the NHL. Their top player, their top prospect is Connor Geekie, who's their third line center. Those guys, have been especially quiet. The fourth line for the Lightning, Mitchell Chaffee got himself one. The Lightning have that kind of gritty fourth line that you really like to see. And like with Luke Glendening at the center, I think really epitomizes that. And they've still shown their ability to get themselves on the score sheet, but that second and first forward lines for Tampa have just been that so much better than the rest of their lines. And you just see such a big drop off in offensive production when Kuch's line and Gensel's line and Point's line, when that one line goes off, and that second line is still solid. Brandon Hagel, I think, has been a really underrated leader on this Lightning team. And that second line forward have been really productive as well, but I haven't seen that much from line 3. I've seen a goal here and there from line 4, but you just kind of want more from, I don't want to say from your bench players, really. You want those guys to get more involved. Zemgus Girgensons is someone who's usually been playing on that third line and has had a really quiet start to his Lightning career. He's a vet. This is his 10th year in the league. And, new team, I know it takes some time to adjust, but you still want to see those veterans getting into the game. And I'd love to see Zemgus Girgensons especially get himself on the score sheet, whether it is a goal or an assist. But just getting him involved in something, in just getting him involved in a point would be massive, I think, for this Tampa Bay Lightning team, because Girgensons has played all 4 games and he has nothing to show for it. Plus or minus a 0, no goals, no assists. Same is the case with Connor Geekie, but he still won some faceoffs and he's also 20 years old. So you want to get him involved too. I really would like to see Geekie get himself a goal. He needs to be a little bit less aggressive because he's already been knocked for a couple of penalties so far. I'd like to see him get a goal, but Zemgus Girgensons is my player to watch for this next game against the Maple Leafs, especially because, coming off of a tough loss where you made some mistakes, where there were some glaring spots on the ice that, things just didn't happen as you would hope for Tampa, that is when you want to see the veterans on your team step up. And whether or not Girgensons is new on the team is irrelevant right now. This is game number 5 in the season. And that's where, he's got his feet wet. He he sees how the team works. He works with the offense, but now you got to start seeing some results. And, you get a little bit more leeway on guys like Connor Geeky, who's in his first NHL season. But Zemgus Girgensons, I think, needs to step up and really needs to kind of be a leader to help that third line particularly, but those bottom 2 lines, that third and fourth forward line, they really need us to start getting more involved in the game. And I'd really like to see Zemgus Girgensons kind of take that lead as one of the vets on the Lightning's third line. So that is something that I am definitely going to watch out for when the Lightning take on the Toronto Maple Leafs later on tonight. But until then, that is going to be it for tonight's show. I want to thank all of you for tuning in to today's episode of Locked On Lightning and making Locked On Lightning your first listen of the day. For your second listen, please find Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Become a fantasy hockey expert and get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Steele and Flip. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. You can, of course, do the same with Locked On Lightning. Pretty sure you have already if you're listening to me talk about it. But if you haven't, please make sure to give us a like, follow, and subscribe. Of course, we're available on all podcast platforms as well as YouTube, and we really appreciate your support. And thank you once again for listening to Locked On Lightning. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Hopefully the Lightning can get themselves a nice little victory. I'm Josh Sperber, wishing all of you a great start to the week, and go Bolts.